There's an article from Politico that made me really repulsed. It has to do a lot with the kind of stuff I've been talking about, and it's called "How Bad Is California's Housing Crisis? A First in the Nation Bill Would Let Students Live in Cars." A progressive Democratic lawmaker is seeking a simple but jarring remedy of last resort for California's college students navigating the state's housing crisis: let them sleep in their cars. Or roughly half a dozen state legislative proposals this year seek to fund student or faculty housing or loosen building regulations. The benefits would come far too late for current students struggling to stay afloat, with 1 in 4 California community college students experiencing homelessness in the past year. Democrats who have a supermajority in the state house face increasing pressure to deliver on affordability issues. Assemblymember Corey Jackson, a Southern California Democrat who has a doctorate in social work, said lawmakers can build long-term solutions while offering an immediate stopgap for a worst-case scenario. His proposal, which cleared its first committee last month, would require community college and the California State University system to plan for an overnight parking program for students. Without a sanctioned on-camping parking program, students are left with no other options but to sleep in their cars somewhere off campus where they might not be welcome, according to Jackson. Supporters make clear the measure is not intended to be a permanent solution to the affordability crisis, but with rent in California more than 30% higher than the national average, the situation is dire. This just deals with the harsh realities that we find ourselves in, Jackson said during a recent hearing. Both the CSU and community college systems are opposed to Jackson's effort, citing a lack of funding and a mandate doesn't address long-term housing solutions. Jackson's interview argued that colleges aren't taking a very moral position. He said they've remained opposed even after he has offered to waive liability and delay implementation until funding is available. It's just a difference of opinion, Jackson said. I believe that we are in a housing crisis, we are in a homelessness crisis, and so every single agency needs to do their part to help with the issue. Last year, 4,000 students in the California State University system were on a housing wait list. Most community college districts don't offer student housing, and there is often a wait list for those that do. The state doesn't collect data on how long it takes for a student to get help after requesting housing assistance, a period when students tend to be the most vulnerable. We're trying to ensure that there is a way for our students to feel safe in these difficult moments, said Yvonne Hernandez, president of the Student Center for California Community College, which is supporting the bill. Long Beach Community College, which has nearly 40,000 students, doesn't yet offer student housing. But when campus officials discovered in 2021 that more than 70 students were sleeping in their cars, they quickly got to work on a safe parking pilot program that is believed to be the first in the region. Mike Muniz, the college's superintendent president, said the school is closing on a contract to provide 422 campus housing beds by 2028, but that immediate need can't wait. Muniz said he experienced housing insecurity as a single father going through college and at times resorted to sleeping in his car. I know what that feels like, Muniz said. For us, it was looking at the data in that moment and saying, hey, we know 70 students with real names and ID numbers that are sleeping in their cars. The college spent $200,000 per year to get the program running, starting a pilot at its trade tech site before moving to a parking structure on the main campus with a direct line of sight from campus police headquarters. Students in the program have access to restrooms, showers, wireless internet. Of the 34 students who used the program during the 2023-2024 school year, 22 remained through last fall. Half were eligible for financial aid, and all but 4 were older than 25. Muniz said there was initial security concerns. Some campus officials had a sky is falling attitude when he first broached the idea, convinced that all these bad things are going to happen if you open up structures and let students sleep. None of those things happened, he said. At first, the school had a separate security detail oversee the program, but it now relies on existing campus police after officials realized they weren't having incidents or concerns that rose to the level where they needed on-site security, Muniz said. Muniz was unsure of how Long Beach's program would work statewide, noting that the ability to secure a space for students is different for each campus. The measure cleared the Assembly High Education Committee, its first hurdle on the party line vote, but similar bills in recent years have failed to reach Governor Gavin Newsom's desk, including a narrow proposal from Jackson last year that was blocked by the Senate Appropriations Committee after an estimate that it would cost in the tens of millions of dollars. Another Democratic proposal, which stalled in 2019, would have required community colleges to allow students to sleep in campus parking lots. And this bill is facing skepticism even from members of Jackson's party. Democrats during the March committee hearing questioned the feasibility of the bill and whether students would have to pay for the program. Assembly Darshana Patel, a San Diego Democrat, told Jackson she has privacy concerns about constant surveillance that would be needed to ensure the safety of students sleeping in their cars. Noon Girpan Policy and advocacy manager with the Community College League of California, told lawmakers the college already provides numerous temporary housing services such as access to state's rapidly rehousing programs, hotel vouchers, rental subsidies, and partnerships with local nonprofits that have a long, trusted history with the community and are already doing this really great work. Garapan said the bill could unintentionally divert funds from these existing programs. Establishing an overnight student parking program would require significant financial and administrative resources to ensure that students have a safe, clean, and secure place to sleep at night. Garapan said, our colleges unfortunately just do not have those resources available. Well, there's two things in this article I kind of want to like really go over. Some of the statistics are worthwhile, like stuff I just was not aware of, and that's why I like to read these things. So the part where they said 1 in 4 California community college students, 1 in 4 California community college students, CCCS, experiences homelessness or experienced homelessness in the past year. I went online. I tried to see what the total number, because the article doesn't say what the number was. State with 40 million people. I know there's millions of them in college, right? Probably somewhere in the early. I saw where it was 2.1 million. If we're being as generous as possible, that has to be at least a few 100,000. But you get the idea. It's at least thousands and thousands of students who are just going to school and homeless. And I had a problem with Jem recently when he was like, get out of California, right? But I was explaining that a lot of people who come here come to school are, like, I'm native, I was born here, whatever, but there are people who come from other states, other countries, and when they come out here, they get hit by the whiplash of like, oh damn, you know, I'm already, I'm getting charged. I thought by going to community college I would get like to save money, right? Because it's cheaper than a regular university. But oh crap, rent is kind of ridiculously high no matter where I go. And I've even talked about how it used to be that people would team up to buy a house. Now they have to team up to even have somewhere to live. And in being not from here, right? They don't know as many people. They're not as trustworthy. They don't, they might not feel as comfortable bunking with somebody that they're not familiar with. And they end up having to lease a car for $200 a month, or possibly buy one that's like $1,000. I mean, the reality is they're in a situation where they've been scammed, right? You come and try to get these degrees to make your life better, and then somehow you end up not having any ability to take care of yourself while trying to get this piece of paper, because you're having to pay for the degree, the schooling, and on top of that, rent and whatever other costs you might have. And someone who's going to school even part-time is not going to be able to hold down a 40-hour week job, which makes it even more difficult to make money and afford things, and thus be able to have a safe place to stay and study and just be somewhere throughout the day. So that's just the reality of being a community college student in the one of the most expensive places in all of America. I mean, it's like they have turned having somewhere to live, somewhere to live that is planted into the ground, into a luxury by virtue of how expensive it is to just rent somewhere. It's like I said, I talked about that $700 for a piece of a room, right? And that's the kind of stuff you see over here, where they really feel like, unless you can pay 2,000 or a fifth of 10 grand every month, then you just shouldn't have anywhere to stay. That is what they are subtly indicating to us. Now, the other part of this was where they said, supporters are saying that the measure is not intended to be a permanent solution to the affordability crisis, and like they're trying to address something, and they bring up the statistic of how California's rent is 30% higher than the national average. And this is where we get into like the part of me that's just sort of torn between, like, the no-win situation, because on one hand, I'm all for anything that lowers the cost of living for people. And in like a general sense, you would think I'd go, oh yeah, I'm all in favor of them trying to, make it to where people have safe places to park on campus. But then when you really start thinking about it, you're like, okay, wait a second. If the schools truly cared about their students, right? Why is it that we don't see these different California community colleges, and maybe even some actual universities as well, but just let's just say the community colleges alone, because it's one of the biggest systems of schools in the country. Why don't we see the presidents, administrators, people who are in charge of these schools, right, get together and petition for the Democratic state legislator, the Democratic governor, who seems way more busy doing his little stupid right-wing podcast and actually addressing the housing crisis in the state. Why don't we see them get together and say, hey, listen, we're educators, we believe in teaching people, but we normally don't even like get involved as a collective in governing. But at the same token, we see the economic insecurity of the people who are just coming out here to get a degree or to further themselves, and we feel like making things cost so much just for them to live out here is counterintuitive to our mission. Why don't we see them doing that? Because the reality is, the only thing that these schools, just like all these other places, right, these different employers and politicians care about is themselves. And until they feel like people are not even like bothering to go to school because they can't afford to like go to school and also try to work somewhere, they're not going to get in a big enough of a group to try to spur societal change, or to like again put pressure on the people who can actually do something to change this. But it's incredible how I have I've tried to explain this before. It's not a dream of someone to sleep in a car. It's not a dream of someone to, not have a house. But god damn, what, like, when you look at these jobs, when you look at um the ever increasing cost of rent. I don't even like to give anecdotal stories, but I have a relative who is, in their 80s. They cannot work, right? Obviously advanced age. And every single damn year, their landlord, people that run the building that they live in, raises the rent by at a minimum 10%. So if you were paying, and it would never be this cheap, 100 in rent, next year it's 110. The year after that it might be 130. The year after that it might be 140. They just but eventually gets to a point where, while the rent keeps increasing over and over, the amount of money you get to live off of does not. So you're just priced out of being able to stay anywhere. And it's so rotten that, again, people come here. They come to the US, specifically to this state, right? The one that's associated with Hollywood and dreams and all this other crap. And then when they get out here, they can't afford to live. Like, and again, I'm not even like totally in favor of this bill, but I find it so interesting that this is one of the few times we've even seen the housing crisis talked about by a lawmaker, because they almost never discuss it. And the reason they don't is because they're not affected by it. All these politicians tend to be people with hundreds of thousands of dollars, millionaires, and they don't have to worry about not being able to meet rent next month, or they're never going to have to face the issues that the people who have the misfortune of living in their jurisdiction have to deal with. And I don't enjoy calling college a scam, but again, when you see people come out here clearly with the intention of getting this degree so they can supposedly get a better job and be able to afford the different things, and then they find themselves not able to live anywhere because the cost of housing is so great that the only way they'd even be able to afford a place is to work some obscene number of hours a week, which would make going to school effectively impossible. It's just so goddamn rotten, man. And it's like, what do you do about it? What do we just sit here and accept, well, this is just the way things are? Because I was talking to this person, they said, hey, that you just have to, people just have to, I guess, brave through the storm. Just have rent just go up so goddamn much to where Even schools and legislators are like, yeah, just go sleep in your car. Just go and lease a car for $200, $300 and just sleep there. At least you'll be able to like actually afford having somewhere to lay your head at night. Richest country in the world, um, state with the largest number of people, and they have turned having somewhere to live into a luxury. Where the only way people can even afford to live, out here, unless they're like 40, 50 something, they've been working the same job for 20 or 30 years, is to like team up in groups of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people to cut the rent, down to a degree to where each of them could afford to even be able to stay there. And then that means they probably have even less space. Like, hey, I guess when you're sleeping in your car, at least you more often than not have your own room, technically, sort of. But it's so insane to think that this is just the state of America. Thousands and possibly hundreds of thousands of people have nowhere to live. Millions can't even afford $1,000 emergency. Millions go to school just to get priced out of having anywhere to live, or possibly even priced out of being able to continue their education. It's just so goddamn rotten. Like, I didn't just start calling it the rotten society because it was a catchy phrase. It's backwards. It's all devoid of anything good. And I'm just disgusted. I'm not even gonna say anything witty. I'm just grossed out that things have gotten to a point where even the lawmakers and schools are like, yeah, it might be a good idea if you're trying to get a piece of paper to sleep in your car for, you know, some months, some years, but then maybe one day you'll be able to get a 1-bedroom apartment. Woohoo!